kneeling down before Christ. After exhorting the elders of Ephesus to keep their eyes fixed upon Christ, it is written, "And when he, that is Paul, had thus spoken, he kneeled down and prayed with them all. And they all wept sore, and fell on Paul's neck, and kissed him, sorrowing most of all for the words which he spake, that they should see his face no more. And they accompanied him unto the ship." Act 20, 36-38. Christ is glorified here in two ways. First, Paul exalted Christ by kneeling before him. Knowing that Paul always sought to glorify Christ, his kneeling down before him to pray in these circumstances reminded me of Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane. It is written, "He went away again the second time and prayed, saying, O my Father, if this cup may not pass away from me, except I drink it, thy will be done." Matthew 26:42. As Christ relied on his Father to bring him back to life, Paul knew he would have his life back if he lost it for Christ's sake, because Christ said, "For whosoever will save his life shall lose it, and whosoever will lose his life for my sake shall find it." Matthew 16:25. Paul therefore knelt to pray, that is, to submit to Christ's will, thus teaching his brethren that their lives belonged to Christ. Second, the bond of affection in Christ and by Christ. Among these believers who were weeping for Paul were Jews and Gentiles, meaning non-Jews, whom the Jews called dogs and unclean. See Peter's confession in Act 10:28. Christ brought these arrogant men who had no interest in him and who hated one another to acknowledge their own uncleanness and take refuge in him to escape God's wrath against their sins. Christ washed them, poured God's love into their heart, according to Romans 5, verse 5, and enabled them to love one another. See John 13:35. These men's tears of love for Paul show that the Spirit of Christ had done an extraordinary work in them. Knowing he was going to face much adversity and die, Paul and his brethren, in tears, knelt before Christ, not to bind or cast out the devil, but to pray, that is, to submit to Christ's will, because upon his shoulder, not the devil's, does the government of the universe rest, according to Isaiah 9, verse 6. Come, therefore, to Christ.